Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I have an exciting lesson. We're going to be going over the different types of creature legs that you can have for any kind of beast that you're designing. Now up here you'll see a list: Plantigrade, Digitigrade, and Unguligrade. The pronunciation of Digitigrade and Unguligrade, it's argued upon among many people, so you're probably going to jump in the comments and say, no, it's Digitigrade or Unguligrade. Whatever it is, these are the three types, okay? And I'm going to include humans here too. I'm also not going to bombard you with a huge list of anatomical names that you have to scour Google in a desperate attempt to find what I'm drawing. I'm going to do this in layman's terms, and I'm just going to show you the basic legs. Get your pencils ready, get your sketchbooks ready, because once you learn how to do this, you can pretty much invent anything you want creature-wise and make the legs look believable. Now, one thing that we won't be getting too much into are insectoid legs, and there are combinations in nature where it's going to feel kind of off. You know, we're going to be mixing some of these elements together, so I just want to keep this as simple as possible. First one we're going to talk about, plantigrade. Okay, so let's think about the human leg, for example. All right, now we're not going to do the bones. We're just going to do the thigh and calf, and you can see how we put our leg down onto the ground. Okay, so this is a plantigrade. There are also bears and rabbits and other animals like that where it's plantigrade. And plantigrade, you know, let's get this leg a little bit more fleshed out here so you can see what's going on. Okay, so we got your quadricep hamstring, you got your calf muscle or gastrocnemius, and then the heel and the back. And let's put a little bit of a darker line right there so you can see where the ground is. Okay, you got a plantigrade. There are other animals in nature where they walk on the flat part of their foot, and you can definitely see it in bears. It's the craziest thing too. If you go on Google and you look at hairless bears, you can really see the shapes of their legs, and it's really cool but also kind of creepy at the same time. Now with an animal like a bear, the kneecap, so here's the human kneecap right here, the patella. So when you think of a bear, you know, you're going to have your hip up here, it kind of comes down at an angle, and then the bear knee actually comes out a little bit. It comes down like this. Notice how I'm not throwing out terms for you. I'm just wanting you to observe the shape and the angle in which these come out. And then the foot sits flat. Now the bare foot is rather large. You can definitely see how far it comes out like this, come out like this, and I'm just doing a very simple line drawing here. So I'm just putting a center line through like the thigh. These are plantigrade. For a digitigrade, you have animals like the dog, the cat, and wolf, animals like that. So the digitigrade, the thigh is a little bit shorter. All right, so you'll probably see this a lot in creatures where you have your knee out here. All right, so for here, we're going to be talking about the digitigrade. The heel is actually way up here. And then you have your tarsals. Okay, so you'll notice in a digitigrade, you'll have your tarsal bones. Okay, and then you have your metatarsals at the bottom. All right, so you can definitely see the tendons stretch across all of these bones. And it's pretty fascinating, but we're not going to bombard you with a ton of anatomy right now, name-wise. Now the foot is not as big on a digitigrade. Okay, you got your heel up here, and there's the flat part of the foot. You're probably most used to seeing these in your creature sketches, especially if you're doing quadrupeds. Okay, now you'll see this a lot in nature. You just got to be careful that the calf, we tend to anthropomorphize a lot of our creatures because we want to personify them. We want to bring the human aspect into them. Now that does work if you're trying to give a fantasy aspect to it or being a little creepy. It's funny because when we design creatures, we have been looking at ourselves all of our lives. So we tend to bring in human elements to no matter what we're drawing. Shoulder joints in creatures that are supposed to be insect, and if it's deliberate, then that's okay. Okay, there we have that, the Digitigrade. Now let's section this off. And also I'm kind of bulldozing through this so that you guys can get to sketching quickly and mix and match these to have something truly cool. Okay, now we're going to do the Unguligrade or the Unguligrade. So think about caribou, elk, cow, bull. These are the Unguligrades. So the first thing you'll notice is the knee is very, very high up. Okay, so the hips for all of these are sitting at an angle. Anatomically, if you were to look at these shapes right here underneath the skin and attached to the skeleton, they're all at an angle. The human is not. We know what our human, our hip bones look like. It's kind of rounded and they sit more horizontally. For an Unguligrade, you're going to have your knee really high up. Okay, and then it's going to come out to the ankle. The ankle is actually very high up also. So these, I'm going to put power. Okay, these legs are built for power. Now, from this point, we're going to come down, and then we're going to break off again before we get to the hoof. Now, the hoof, that's what an Unguligrade is. It's a hoofed animal. Think about all the hoofed animals that we, not hoofed, that we can observe in nature. The hoof itself is actually one giant toenail. It's pretty crazy. But you can see here that the knee is really high up here. Or I'm sorry, you can see that the knee is really high up here, and then the ankle is way up here. So you have all of this. This is all tarsal. Okay, so you can see we have Plantigrade, where the flat part of the foot is planted on the ground. You can definitely see the bear. So let's put some flesh into it. Okay, there's the bear. Kind of see the barefoot now. Okay, and then you have your Digitigrade, so you have your dog, cat, fox, the animals like that. And then you have your Unguligrade. Okay, think about all of your hoofed animals: deer, elk, gazelle, moose, cow, bull. You can have some fun here because when you're designing a creature, you want to be imaginative, but you also need to be believable. All right, so let's put the flat part here so you can actually see the ground. Okay, if you're following along with me so far, take a step back and see if these are making sense for you. And I want you to say these along with me: Plantigrade, Digitigrade, Unguligrade. All right. Memorize those. Memorize the different places that you put the joints, especially the knee. To help you out with that, put a sphere in where the knees are. Like this. Okay, there we go. Now remember, for the Unguligrade, because I have to go over this again, the Unguligrade, the distance between the hip and the knee are way shorter. You can see it on horses. Okay, you can see it on wildebeest. They're way shorter like this. All right, and then the distance between the knee and the heel is also pretty short. And then it gets very long for the entire foot. This right here, here's the interesting part. From the ankle all the way down to the end of the hoof, this is the foot. The whole thing is. It's pretty crazy, because you got your tarsals and you have your metatarsals. Okay, and you have that hoof at the end. Okay, So let's start inventing things that maybe are a mixture of it. Okay, so when we're designing creatures and the legs for our creatures, we want to make sure that the legs have a flow to them. All legs have a flow in their design and their function. So let's think about the hip, the knee, the ankle, and the foot. If we just look up here real quick, we have the Plantigrade, the Digitigrade, and then the Unguligrade. How can we combine those to have something really crazy but still functional? So let's first think about the angle in which the thigh will come off of the hip. Okay. Now, as far as how big the muscles are and how stretchy the skin is, we need to understand the underlying structure before we start manipulating the muscles and the lumps and the fat and everything on top of it. I do like the high knee. I think it's kind of neat looking. So I think I'm going to put the knee pretty high here and then maybe bend this part in like this. So I'm going more Digitigrade. And then I'm just going to add in a little bit of a lump there. Now you're probably wondering, why do I get to add in the lump if I don't know if it's going to be Digitigrade or Unguligrade? And the truth is, when we look at the Unguligrade, so the hoof coming in here, we need to think about why that hoof is on this type of leg. Why doesn't this one get claws? So in evolution, the hooves are actually built for locomotion and they encase the digit tips. All right, this is mainly for speed, built for open terrain. So because remember what I was mentioning, that the whole thigh up here is built for power. This whole leg is built for power. It's efficient and it's also weight bearing. Okay, because if you're pushing on it very hard and you need to get across a large body of land quickly, hooves are, or ungulates, if you want to call them that, are specifically built for this. And you can see it in parts of the world, like the open plains and everything. And really, they're just modified toenails. That's all these are. But when I'm thinking about this type of creature, the whole leg is a little bulkier. So when you're looking at your creatures right now and you don't know whether to put claws on them or hooves, just think about the overall structure of the leg. It's a little bulkier, so I'll probably put claws on there because this is not streamlined to the point where it's going to need to be fast. This is more dog-like. It's almost like a giant dog that I'm drawing. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm not going to draw long toes. I'm going to draw them shorter. I'm going to keep them shorter to keep the foot light. So this way, whatever creature this is, it can travel quickly across the ground and still have some power too, which is precisely why dogs are fast and they're also very powerful and they can change direction incredibly quickly. So this is how you would invent a leg like that. Now, as far as how far over to bring this knee, see the knee right here, and if you do a line straight down, remember, I'm not going to throw out exact measurements for you because I don't want to confuse you. But a good rule of thumb is keep the foot intersecting that straight line. All right, because if the foot is doing this, so if you have your knee and it's back behind it, like that, the creature could be bending forward, yes, but you're going to have so much weight bearing forward that there's no weight catcher down here. Okay, so you want to be able to square up this leg and have a good center of gravity. You'll see it a lot in dinosaurs too, depending on how good the diagrams are that they draw. So these are just some things to think about. You could put some spikes on the back, which are always fun to put on creatures. You don't have to put spikes. They can be large scales. A good rule of thumb is Whenever you're putting scales on a creature, always do the larger scales and the most open section of the anatomy, because that skin doesn't need to stretch nearly as much as the smaller parts or the wrinkles. For example, the joint right here where the leg would need to stretch out because of the tendons, the scales would be smaller because that skin needs to be more elastic. You can't stretch the large ones as much as you can the small ones. And then for the calf muscle, you would have the larger scales again. So that's just something to think about. Anyway, this was hopefully presented in the simplest way possible. Again, I didn't want to throw out a lot of anatomical terms for you because I understand that beginners are watching this, and I would much rather you understand the functionality of this leg and what it looks like when you start putting the muscles on it and the different types of toes and the feet. Okay, hopefully this was helpful. Plantigrade, Digitigrade, Unguligrade. Do your studying, do your sketching, and comment below. Let me know what you're learning and if this is helping you. All right, hopefully you learned something new today. I'll see you around the next time. Peace.